You have no idea how hard it was for me to compile a list like this. Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to Team Forbidden's YouTube page again. It is Andrew the Collector here. We are starting a new series for our top 10 favorite decks for each of our team members. And we're going to start with me. So for my top 10, I'm actually going to start out with a few honorable mentions. We have, Cubics, Magical Musketeers, Generators, Time Lords, Numbers, Numeron, and Amorphages. These didn't make it into my top 10 because I just haven't had the most success with them that I originally wanted. But they're still fun to play and above far other decks that I've played in the past. So if you are interested in casual and rogue style playing, I would definitely check these decks out. But they don't hit as hard for me personally as my regular top 10. If I were to choose the best one out of my honorable mention, I would say Generators. Mainly because you can go into True King of all Calamities. If it wasn't for him, I would say Magical Musketeer. Because their style of gameplay is just so unique, and a lot of decks can't really go around their type of gameplay because they can play traps and spells directly from their hand. So anyway, let's kick it off with my number 10. For my number 10, I have Batterymen. This may come as a little bit of a surprise because there were 3 decks that I had in high school that were my main for the longest time, and one of them was Batterymen. Industrial Strength back then, at least, was a hell of a monster. It was basically that era's UCT. You could get it out so easily, and it had such a great effect and such a high attack, which was not once per turn, by the way, and just their whole play style was just so fun, at least for back then. I may do an update on the deck for nowadays, but considering how the meta is, it might be good for a control format, but I'm not really sure. I have to get the deck and test it out, but stay tuned for that if I decide to do it in the future. But if you want me to, leave a comment down below, and it'll just make me want to do it even more. So for my number 9, I'm kind of cheating here. It's going to be zombies in general, but more so with Skull Servants specifically. Like I said, with Batterymen, I had 3 mains, where Batteryman was 1. Skull Servant is the 2nd. This deck is so fun and so interesting. Because if you guys don't know, King of the Skull Servants is a monster where it gains 1,000 attack for each Skull Servant in your deck. But they came out with several different monsters, such as White Mare, Lady in White, White Princess, White Prince, and most recently White Baking, to where while they're in the graveyard, their names are treated as Skull Servant. So you can get your King of the Skull Servants attack to like 10,000 plus. I even got it to 12,000 at one point, which was insane. And just all their other support with, generic zombie support like Gozuki, Mizuki, even Unizombie. All this zombie support for this deck specifically was just great. But also in this bracket, I'm also putting in like the Zombie Horde and Zombie World strategies, like with Doom King Baldrock, Zombie World, the Field Spell, and just zombies in general almost. But Skull Servants would be the main in this category. So number 8 is actually more personal for me. It's Black Wings. You've heard me talk about in the past how Black Wings were special to me because I had a longtime best friend, Lucas, who's no longer in our group, and I don't think really plays the game anymore. His favorite deck was Black Wings. And it's one of my favorite too because the style of gameplay was just so fun, being able to special summon out monsters one after the other from your hand, and getting new support recently to combat the new meta was just fun. It was just a fun deck, and I just love it. But it's more so number 8 on a more personal matter because of my friendship with Lucas. Number 7, this deck has probably gone through the most changes than any other deck that I've ever played, and that's Maju. Maju was basically the new style of Skull Servants because its main strategy is to banish a bunch of cards off of different card effects, summon out Maju. It gains 400 attack with every single one of your banished cards, and just swing for game. The one-hit, one-kill wonder that it is. I just love it. But with the thing that really made this deck relevant, it was the release of Pot of Desires. because Pot of Desires, its cost is that you banish the top 10 cards off of your deck. Even if that gets ashed or negated, if you still slap down a Grim Maju off of that, that's 4,000 damage right there if you can successfully attack into it. But my main style of gameplay, because you can play this way out of... You can play this deck in any kind of format that you want. You can do it as the Golden Castle, you can do it as the Dangers, but I like to do it as the Control, where I have a bunch of back row, especially in this Control format. Crackdown, Torrential Tribute, there can only be one. Hell, even Rivalry of the Warlords, Macrocosmos, the Solemn Brigade. There's so much potential for this deck, and having that back row plus Grim Maju out to attack while the back row defends your life points and your board, yeah, that's really good. Number 6 is Dark Magician. I love the strategy of Dark Magician. The only thing that's making this deck not any higher is the fact that Magician Souls is still an $80+ card. I know that's more on a personal note, but I can't help it. I can't justify playing a deck that requires a card that is that much. I mean, with stuff like Forbidden Droplets or Lightning Storm or even Tactical Talents, those cards are really good, but they're not necessarily in certain strategies. Magician Souls is. It's essential for the Dark Magician strategy to keep up with the format, which is why it's so much. If it was cheaper, yeah, I would get a playset and this deck would probably be number 3 or even number 4. But because that card is so expensive, I just can't justify it. But even still, I'm trying to find a way to make Dark Magician playable, but until that card gets reprinted, hopefully in the future, I just can't see me doing anything spectacular with it. Now, number 5, I'm going to get a lot of hate for this one, but I don't care. It's AntiMeta. This, along with Grim Maju, have probably gone through the most changes out of any decks that I've ever played, because with the strategy of AntiMeta, it's playable literally in any meta format, whether it's combo, whether it's control, whether it's aggro or stun. It works in all of them because there's a stun card for every kind of situation, and most of those stun cards are budget, which makes this a really budget friendly deck. The only thing that you have to do is to figure out which card will combat which meta. Like, for instance, Fossil Dyna is really good against combo decks, because if you get that out with a Moonmere Shield or Power of the Guardians or a bunch of back row, guess what? They'll probably have to scoop and move on to game 2. With control formats, you put in a bunch of back row hate, plus stuff like Grand Maju or any other big beaters that you can get out with ease is great. Hell, like Inspector Border. If you get out Inspector Border and get rid of their back row and attack into them, great. You're on the path to victory right there. So yeah, a lot of people may not like AntiMeta, but as long as combo heavy decks exist, I will always play AntiMeta. Number 4, Chainburn. This is probably the deck that got me the closest to topping an event. I have said it before at that time, and I'll say it again. I was off by maybe 400 life points against an Altergeist player back when they were like at the top 3 metagame. I was so close to making the top cut, but then time was called. Ironic for a Chainburn player, I wasn't able to get in that final damage, and he got the win because of time. It was probably the biggest disappointment that I've had in this game, but nevertheless, I still had a lot of fun, and I will still continue to play Chainburn. Yes, you could do the whole wave motion cannon and Final Countdown and Cauldron of the Old Man strategy like Jeff does, but there may come a time where Mystic Mine does get hit on the ban list. I don't know if it's going to be this next list or the list after that, but it's not going to be circulating very, very often. Once it does, that strategy isn't going to be as relevant because the Chainburn strategy works regardless of having Mystic Mine out on the field or not, because you can have a bunch of back row like Wabaku, like Threatening War to protect yourself, and have stuff like I forgot that card that you activate, it protects your back row from destruction and sends a fiend type to your graveyard. Dark Sacrifice, that's it. Because you have stuff like that to protect yourself, but with the other strategy, you only have Mystic Mine most of the time, and sometimes it's not going to be enough, especially if it gets hit to 1 or something. So Chain Burn, it can work with Mystic Mine, it can work without, but it's such a fun strategy, and I really enjoy doing it, and it's so cheap. Aside from Pot of Extravagance, everything is literally under $1. Literally under $1. You can make the entire deck for under $100. Now, top 3. Number 3 is Dinos. I love this strategy so much. Say what you will about Miscellaneousaurus or Oviraptor or Fossil Dig, I love UCT. It's probably my favorite boss monster in the game. It's easy to get out. It's such a big beater. It can get over a lot of stuff. It can attack a bunch of things. It has an effect that's non-targeting, non-destruction, except against links, but that doesn't really matter. But combine that with like Oviraptor, Lost World, Miscellaneousaurus, plus your Dolka and Logia, which are Strike and Judgment on legs. Yeah, you got a really aggressive deck. And it's been on the rise lately. And it's still cheap. Aside from Animadorn Archosaur, which is like $40 or $50. But even still, you can do the strategy without it. Not as well, mind you, but still, it's great. And if you're just coming into the game, I highly recommend doing the Dino strategy because it's somewhat cheap, it's simple, and it's great for people returning or for newcomers. I will say it once and I'll say it again. I love this strategy, and I highly recommend anyone who's interested in the aggro or aggressive side of Yu-Gi-Oh! To pick up this deck and make it their main. It's so much fun. Number 2, Trickstars. Bring Light Stage back to 3. This deck is so halted without 3 Light Stage. Yes, if it comes back, put reincarnation to 1. Hell, even ban reincarnation. I don't care. I can live without reincarnation, but we can't live without Light Stage. It's our non-once per turn searcher, it's our extra burn, and it's our back row removal. We can live without reincarnation because the card's unfair anyway. I mean, even I think it should be limited to 1. But aside from that, I love this deck. It's so fun, it's so unique, and it's so easy to know. Just the constant slight burn of 200 each for just having your opponent just play the game. It's just so much fun. I just love it so much, and I pray that one day Light Stage can come back to 3. Once that day does, this is going to be my main deck, hands down. And now for my number 1, if you guys don't already know what my number 1 is, it's Rose Dragon or Plant Synchro. Like I said at the beginning of the film, there were 3 decks that were my main deck in high school: Skull Servants, Batterymen, and Plant Synchro. Black Rose Dragon, say what you want about it, it's my favorite card of all time because of this reason. They're getting new support in the future. I cannot wait for it. The only thing that is halting it, even after the new support comes out, is we're missing 2 cards. We're missing Rose Princess, and we're missing that field spell. Once those come in, this deck is going to be so much better. Because as it is right now, without the new support, it's not really anything special. It's more like just link climbing and hoping your opponent doesn't have an Nibiru or an Ash or any kind of hand trap. Because if they do, then you're dead in your tracks. When the new support comes out, it's going to make things a lot more consistent and a lot easier. But once those Rose Princess and the field spell come out, it's going to make it so much easier to link climb, to set up your boards, and Black Rose during your opponent's turn. It's going to be fun. But yeah, in this one, you can say that it's just plants in general. I loved all kinds of plant decks. I love the Rika, no matter how terrible they are. I love Rose Dragon, obviously, Plant Synchro, Naturia. Predaplant, I love all the plant decks. Their style, their gameplays, they're just so unique. And I just wish that one day there will be a plant deck on its own that will just become tier 1, hell, even tier 0 one day. But unlikely to happen, knowing Konami. They're more focused on the heavier side of stuff like the dragons, like the warriors, fiends, and machines, and all that stuff. But who knows? I may get my wish one day, I may not. But until then, Rose Dragon is going to be my number 1 deck, combined with Plant Synchro as my favorite deck of all time, and Black Rose Dragon will continue to be my favorite card of all time. So guys, thank you so much for tuning into our page again, and stay tuned for the rest of our team going to give each of their top 10 lists. So stay tuned for that. Comment down below, like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. We're going to have a lot more stuff coming up in the future. We got stuff planned up for the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that too, and we'll catch you guys later.